Hi guys, I'm Adam Wilborn from WhatCulture.
And I'm Andy Murray from WhatCulture, and I'm going to tell you the WWE pushes that may be doomed without Paul Heyman on Raw. And on top of that, I've got a backstage note on the botched finish for Mickie James versus Asuka from this week's Raw.
Plus, a former WWE superstar has expressed an interest into heading to AEW, and Jeff Hardy says he's on his last chance with the WWE. This is the news.
Well, let's kick things off with this doomed push story, which has a nice ring to it indeed. So Paul Heyman replaced as Raw Executive Director in June, no longer in a position of power. At the time, there was all kinds of speculation as to which wrestlers were going to suffer the most from him leaving that spot. Dave Meltzer was on Wrestling Observer Radio this week and claimed that he was told at the time from sources in WWE that the two wrestlers who were going to suffer the most are Aleister Black and Andrade. He goes on, basically the exact quote here is that these are the two guys who could really be in trouble without Paul Heyman. The reason being that Paul Heyman saw a lot more in these dudes than Vince McMahon does. He also comments a little bit on the recent split with Zelina Vega, Andrade and Angel Garza, stating that there's a good chance that Vince could just forget about Garza and Andrade now that Zelina's moved on and is now a singles wrestler or whatever. Although he does say that, if they have a blow-off match, it's very likely that Garza will go over, given that Vince McMahon has previously identified this guy as a potential star. So it's worth noting that all three of these guys are still on television in fairly regular roles. We're yet to see any dramatic declines in pushes for any of them, although Andrade hasn't had the best 2020. He had his US title reign, but the stable with Zelina has just been loss after loss after loss, basically. They've never really got any momentum together. And Aleister Black is doing the heel thing with Kevin Owens. This week had a really dumb finish in what was otherwise a really good match with Retribution messing with the lights and stuff. So it's interesting to think about. I guess time will tell how these guys' careers pan out, but they're three very popular and talented guys, particularly among, certain types of fans. I hate using the term IWC because the IWC doesn't exist anymore. Every one of you has a bloody internet connection. Every person who watches wrestling near enough, at least in the United States and the UK and so forth. So what do you reckon of this, Adam Wilborn?
Disappointing, but not exactly surprising news. I think if you'd have asked me to name the people, having not read this story, I probably would have guessed at one, if not both of them, which is a real shame. You talk about like Angel Garza in addition to this, a guy who we were tipping to be the next Eddie Guerrero. Like, they're all so talented, and just because they're not big men with big muscles, it's like, you can light and shade, Vince, light and shade. But yeah, I can completely understand that. I think out of the two of them, I think Aleister Black might stand a better chance because the Black Mass is such a mint finisher, and it's the new sort of out of nowhere thing that they can use with him. And I'm really intrigued to see what they do with the whole storyline with him and Kevin Owens. Andrade, I am more worried about. Especially if they're taking him away from Zelina Vega as well. And I'd be more worried for Aleister Black if they were like, what? Zelina Vega and Aleister Black are a thing? Oh, well, make them a couple on screen or whatever. Is it too simplistic of me to say, if you're not doing anything with Andrade, why not just send him back to NXT? You've got a former NXT champion who is just great, whose work rate would be far more appreciated on that brand. And again, not to sort of boil it down to the most basic of things here, but you've got Legado del Fantasma, who I think he could fit into brilliantly. Is that me being a little bit, they could all just be in one big group together?
Well, I think it's worth noting that Andrade's NXT career didn't really take off until he was aligned with Zelina Vega as well. So, he's obviously worked very hard on his English to deliver the kind of promos that Vince McMahon wants and demands, the lengthy diatribes that he needs from his top guys or whatever. But being with Zelina kind of circumnavigated that and made that kind of unnecessary. Garza is a bit of a better talker, I think. He's a bit more charismatic as well, so it's easy to see why he might fare a little bit better as a singles guy. Either way, it's disappointing. I like Andrade a lot, and I just want to see him do good things. Aleister Black as well.
He was someone I was like, he could be a great feud for Drew with the title, and then they just sort of went, right, that's that done with. So I was like, Oh, okay. Maybe just switching him to God, he'd be great on SmackDown, actually. Both, please don't give up on them. They're great. Give them their chances. Just because they're a little bit different doesn't make it wrong. Okay, Vince? Although, why change the habit of a lifetime? Right, let's move on and talk about the former WWE superstar who would love a move to AEW, and it is former wrestler Aiden English. I say former wrestler. He hasn't wrestled since April 2019 when he fought on a Worlds Collide show. He was a commentator, of course, mainly on 205 Live, occasionally popping up on SmackDown. But he announced recently his return to the ring. He actually has his first match tomorrow against Filth King Brubaker for Zelo Pro Wrestling in Chicago. He was, of course, part of the WWE releases back in April. Basically, what happened was Twitter user Worst Pirate Ever tweeted, "Please AEW sign at Drama King Matt," which is the name he goes by now. He's Drama King Matthew Rewalt, I think. I'm sorry if I butchered that, Matt. And he basically quote tweeted this with the emoji. I love Aiden English. I don't think AEW will necessarily leap on the fact that they can, reunite him with Miro, but I think he's got a lot to offer, whether it be as a commentator, a manager, an in-ring performer. I really think he is someone WWE dropped the ball with.
I think he's a very talented, entertaining guy and was a huge part of why Rusev Day got so over in the first place. For me, he's the kind of guy I would like to see what he can do. I'd like a sample of what he can do outside of the WWE world before saying, hey, AEW should definitely pick the dude up for all his qualities and so forth. It's just the AEW roster is pretty damn big at the moment. And I'm looking forward to sampling his indie stuff, seeing how he does there. And then we can, maybe see where we feel he could fit in and stuff, which ultimately doesn't matter, but it's the purpose of the video.
Maybe we could get a shoot interview to go with the Simon Gotch one that gets pushed to every single wrestling fan on YouTube.
It's a key part of the algorithm. You're never escaping it. Let's talk a little bit about that botched finish from Monday Night Raw. Mickie James versus Asuka this week. It was supposed. Well, no, it was a mess. Asuka had an Asuka lock applied. Mickie rolled it into a pinfall attempt. The match just stopped. Everyone was confused, including the referee. The commentators were like, did Mickie tap out? It was a whole mess of a situation. It was a nightmare. Eventually, the referee decreed it a refereeing decision on the basis that Mickie couldn't continue, despite the fact that Mickie was executing an offensive maneuver at the time. Brian Alvarez on Wrestling Observer Radio has a report from several sources in the company stating that the blame isn't on the performers, the blame is on the referee, unfortunately. This was supposed to be a tap out. Mickie was supposed to submit to the Asuka lock at some point in the match, but that wasn't it. It is noted that the official likely thought that Mickie was injured, so he brought the match to an end. And by the time he made the call, it was too late to go back and rectify the mistake. So, mistakes happened. The bout ended on a whimper. I'm not going to crucify this poor dude. Everyone slips up every now and then. And it's certainly not the main event of WrestleMania 35.
No,
so there's
exactly.
That.
I was really angry at the time with what happened. Credit to Mickie James. I think I saw Miller tweeting this. So good at selling that even the referee bought it. Again, I will repeat the thing that I spent about 2 minutes ranting about on the Raw review. Why on earth wasn't this match at Clash of Champions? It's a former world champion, arguably posing one of the biggest threats to Asuka's title reign. But okay, let's have a 2-week build for Zelina Vega, who would have probably done better had you given her a proper 4-6 weeks rather than just walking in, slapping Asuka and going, we all know I'm not taking the title off her. It's ridiculous. But credit to Mickie James. Like you say, these mistakes happen. It's not the end of the world. I'd rather, as with all things like this, when you see it, for example, in MMA, UFC, err on the side of caution. Yes, it was a disappointing finish, but I'd rather they do that than him go, carry on, and then we find out that Mickie James was legitimately hurt and having to sort of soldier on and, whatever the best thing is for the performer. We can't sit here and rant about AEW not taking care of Matt Hardy and then go, oh, bloody hell, why don't they just let it go with Monday Night Raw and Mickie James and Asuka? So like you say, mistakes happen. Let's move on. And let's move on to Jeff Hardy, who in a recent interview with BT Sport has basically said he knows he's on his last chance with the promotion. He talked very openly. Actually, I really liked watching this when he saw him talking about the late Chadwick Boseman and how that deeply affected him. And then he continued to talk about his own career, saying, "Getting in trouble with the law is no fun, and I hope and pray that's over, because when I first came back, this is my last chance to get it right. I can't screw up again. If I do, I'm done. I think that's what brings such happiness. I have my family, and everybody in my family is healthy." I mean, just absolutely spot on. I'm not going to call him the current Intercontinental Champion because that would besmirch the wonderful name of Sami Zayn. But, you know, he's a good paper champion.
Yeah, good. Yeah, good for Jeff. He's very open, very honest, and puts his hands up to the various things that have happened. I hope that he's, you know, in a much better place than he was, because it's been a tough year or so for him. So
Absolutely.
Good for him.
Absolutely. Right, let's move on to your Twitter questions. At WhatCulture WWE, of course, if you want to get in touch with us. First question today comes from Mark Solid. He says, "Morning, guys. Hope all is well. Thoughts on how long WWE will keep Retribution going? If they are going to reveal them as NXT stars, it would have to keep them going to at least Survivor Series. How long till they start the reveals? What do you reckon to all this?" We were talking about this yesterday on Wrestling Questions Answered.
Yeah, I think they've got to do it quite soon, because you could clearly see who was behind those masks now that the eyes and stuff are a lot bigger when they're cut out of the material. You could clearly see Mercedes Martinez, Mia Yim, Dijakovic, Dio Madden, and Shane Thorne there. It's so obvious. So for me, you've got to do it really, really soon. I do think they'll hold off until about Survivor Series, though.
Yeah, I really hope that, because it's all the bollocks with brand warfare, then combined with an invading force. Can't wait for November. Everything Wrestling gives us our second question of the day. Really interesting, this one. I'd love to know your thoughts. If AEW was going head-to-head with the NXT roster of 2014 to 2016, do you feel NXT would win the ratings each week? In my opinion, this was the golden age of NXT. This is really hard to tell, because how do you compare where wrestlers were 4 years ago to where other ones are today and so forth? I think that was the best period of NXT as well. It was booked simply, it was booked A to B to C. There was no silly nonsense. There was no operatic entrances, aside from the Demon, obviously. There was no hot shot booking. There was no, we've got to screw our competition over, so let's have 3 title matches on one show at the cost of our creativity. I think it would stand a much better chance, put it that way, and I do think it would have... more of a chance of breaking the stranglehold that AEW has had on the 18 to 49 demographic. But then again, if they were going head-to-head with AEW, the booking wouldn't be the same. It would probably have more hot-shot booking. And I think there's a tendency as well, I completely agree, it was a golden age of NXT, but there's also a tendency to remember it with sort of rose-tinted glasses. Like, that NXT was very spaced out and paced really well, and obviously built wonderfully to all those memorable takeovers. But week to week, would they have retained viewers with just, developmental match? I don't know. I think absolutely they would stand a better chance. I'm not saying that the roster is significantly worse right now, but then again, yeah, I think had that happened back then we'd have had more title matches again and again and again. Speaking of which, 2 title matches on NXT tonight. The tag titles and the North American Championship, of course, being defended on NXT as they go head-to-head with AEW Dynamite for the first time in absolutely ages. My best friend MJF back in action in AEW, just to give us that little balance. Very heavy on Retribution. Well, sorry, where are my manners? Retribution! Today, a final question comes from Adam Schmidt, who says, do you think Retribution, I'm getting exhausted doing this, should have an older legend be their mouthpiece or leader? A la Jake Roberts in AEW, what about a serious Jerry Lawler, Bubba Ray Dudley, or even Andy's favourite, Gangrel?
Gangrel, my goodness. The vampire leading Retribution. I think Retribution should stop existing. That's my personal preference with that stable. I don't think so. I think it would dilute the narrative a little bit. I think it's better for them to have, if they're going to go with the undermined performance center project gimmick, it makes a lot more sense for them to speak from that perspective rather than having an old dude come in and go, this is what we did 20 years ago.
Exactly. Aces and Eights was really good. You got to follow that blueprint if you were a fan of that in TNA, for example. It just sort of kind of lost its way. Learn from that, although they clearly haven't, and they'll never watch TNA. Also, if you want to know who else we think should be in Retribution, check out that Wrestling Questions Answered video / podcast we did yesterday. So that's already up on the channel now, or available as a podcast if you search for WhatCulture Wrestling, wherever you get your podcasts from. Let's move on to today's and finally, and shout out to Jay Wild on Twitter. It's her birthday this week. You thought we wouldn't remember, didn't you? She tweeted, crafting and at WhatCulture WWE is a great combination. She's doing a little bit of the old knitting, whatever you call it, crafting. But I wanted to use this as a launch pad. What do you do whilst watching this channel? I want to do like a little montage of the random stuff people do whilst watching us, Andy. Thoughts?
That's going to go well.
We're taking our life into our own hands, aren't we? No photos from the bath, all right?
Oh.
That's a warning for you. But yeah, let us know the weird random stuff that you do whilst watching us here in the comments section below. And let us know your thoughts on all of today's news stories. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And subscribe to WhatCulture Wrestling, wherever you get your podcasts from, for daily wrestling podcasts, of course. You can also continue the conversation and let us know your Twitter questions on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE. Or actually, follow both of us. You can follow Andy Murray at
Andy H. Murray. The H stands for Happy Birthday Raul Mendoza as well. It's his birthday today. Good for him.
Hey, a little bit of a celebration tonight on the show. Who knows? Ooh, okay. Follow me at Adam Wilborn. Follow us all at WhatCulture WWE, as I said. But for now, my thanks to Andy Murray. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you soon.